So to start out here, public service announcement, we do this every time, is to check your trees. We have an insect that transmits a disease to citrus, and it's a fatal disease. There's no cure for it. So we ask that you check your trees at least once a month. If you're out there once a week, check them once a week. You might need a hand lens to find them. This is the insect. It's called the ACP, the Asian citrus psyllid. You might not see him unless you have a big amount of them. This is on the backside of a leaf. What you're going to look for is you're going to look for this little guy. This is the nymph. This is the immature. And what this little guy does is he secretes this little curly waxy stuff. And that's what you're going to find. This is a Pikachu. This guy looks a lot like a Pikachu, except instead of the red cheeks, he's got red eyes. So you're going to find this guy on the new growth, the tender growth. If you have the insect, it doesn't mean that you have the disease. This is basically what the disease is going to look like if you get this in your tree. It's you'll see on the leaves the blotching. And if this was a nutrient deficiency, it would be, you'd have equal marks on both sides of this mid vein. Also, the fruit can be misshapen, and sometimes it doesn't ripen all the way, or it stays green part of the way. So they used to call it citrus greening disease, but people usually relate greening with good, so we don't call it that anymore. Ants. Okay, so if you see, ants like to farm these guys for the sweet stuff. So if you see ants going up to a certain part of your tree, go check it out, see what they're doing. So controlling your ants can help to control the disease. Now, if we were doing this in person, we would be handing out these cards. You can get there, but you can get to that place at the ACP from UCANR. These cards will tell you what homeowners should do to control them, what to do if you find the insect, the different control methods you can use. Also, there's an interactive map there that's kind of cool. I like the interactive stuff. This interactive map you can put in your address or your city, and it'll show you where they found the disease, where they found the insects. And if you find the insects, don't freak out. It doesn't mean that you have the disease. And it'll show you where they've released they're not predators, they're parasitoids. What they are is they're like little wasps that if you see this, the little Pikachus with the holes in them, it means that they've been parasitized, that the good guys have gone out and done their job. Okay, so on to, I know this is supposed to be about native plants, but I got to give you my spiel first on lawns. Okay, so how many lawns are there in the United States? Here's a map from NASA of the irrigated lawns. Okay, so NASA scientists estimate that there are more than 40 million acres of lawns in the United States. So that makes lawns our single largest irrigated crop. And I included this picture because here we have, these are just medians. These aren't, you can't walk on these. You can't walk the dog on them. You can't play sports on them or anything. They're just to look at when you go by at 40 miles an hour. So tending all of those lawns takes up an estimated 80 million pounds of pesticides and 100 million pounds of fertilizer annually. And in this picture, you'll see here they're watering, and they're probably putting all kinds of fertilizers and chemicals, and they got this great dark green color, while the area that's the natural area has got the wildlife. Okay, the average homeowner spends 40 hours a year mowing their lawn, and the average gas mower uses a quart of fuel an hour. And water, okay, so this is changed up a little bit because water is what we're all concentrating on right now. Turf requires 1 to 1.5 inches of water a week. So I hope I did the math on this right. It's confusing with cubic feet and yards and everything that they give you, but 1 inch of water is 0.623 gallons per square foot. So A 15 square foot lawn would need 934 gallons per week. And that's, you know, what the water companies are telling us that we should use. That's almost 2 people's worth just for your lawn. So every day in the US, approximately 6,000 acres of open space is lost to development, and that's 4 acres a minute. So what can we do? So we can nurture the nature that we have in our yards. And here's where I finally get to the part about natives. Why natives? Okay, so natives are the plants that have evolved over time. So you've got balance, there's critical habitat that's dependent on the natives, the bird and wildlife species, and also the pollinators. The natives invite beneficial pollinators and consumers. So here we've got this ladybug that's eating aphids. Here she's tending her eggs. So if you see this on the underside of your plants, don't wipe it off. And this guy looks looks pretty scary, but that's the immature ladybug. So if you see these guys, let them be. So natives conserve water. So once established, most natives, even the natives that require more water, that are like by riparian areas and stuff like that, usually don't require as much water as what we're putting in our yards with our lawns. They're low maintenance, so they might give you the summer off. A lot of natives don't do too much during the summer. Take a vacation. Native plants are healthy for your family because native plants do not require pesticides and chemicals. And they're healthy for the planet. There's reduced pollution because you're not using the mowers and blowers anymore. And there's carbon storage and long-lived trees and plants. So totally, they have a reduced carbon footprint. So, but best of all, they are beautiful. And these are tidy tips. And there's a lot of people that grow tidy tips. I can't grow tidy tips for the life of me. So what might work in my yard might not work in your yard. So upsetting the balance. So when you have an exotic, a landscape with a lot of exotics, you don't have the insects that you have with the native plants because most insects are host specific. A lot of the exotics don't have any insects at all, and you might think, oh, that's a good thing. But if you don't have any bugs, you don't have any birds. Okay, so what should I plant? As the master gardeners, we don't really tell you what to plant. We give you the tools so you know what you would like, because everybody's got a different idea of what looks good. So for California natives, there's upsides and downsides. The upsides is that there's many varieties available. It used to be, you used to have to go to specialized nurseries, but now most of the bigger nurseries offer sections with native plants. They're slow growing. So the slow growing plants in your yard are the enduring plants. Those are the ones that are going to look better time after time as time goes on. The slow growers are going to just get better and better and better. Most of them are drought tolerant. No fertilizer needed. They don't like fertilizer. And they can attract native pollinators. And that's a big thing right now is the pollinators too. And like I said before, they can give you the summer off. The downside is sometimes they look ugly in the nursery pot. If you go to a regular nursery and you see all the plants, they put lots of fertilizers in them and they've all got big flowers and they look all gorgeous. And then you go to the native section and they look like sticks in pots. They're not always going to look like that. Okay, so kind of know ahead of time what you're looking for before you pick them out, because you can't go by just sight by going to the nursery. They're slow growing. A lot of people want instant gratification. They don't want the slow growing plants, and they can be picky with our adapted conditions. So there's a few plants that there's ones that are really good right now are ones that don't like summer water at all. They don't want you to irrigate them. And they may go dormant in the summer. So make sure you have plants. You don't plant everything that's going to go dormant, or you'll probably have the fire department knocking on your door. So just because a plant is native does not mean that it will work in your landscape. Okay, so this is a big state. Stay as close to your plant community as you possibly can, because we have everything from the Sierras to the coast. We've got a lot of different conditions, a lot of different areas in the state. And consider the mature size. So know before you plant that these plants are going to get bigger. This one here, I'm sure this guy looked, this is probably landscaped by a professional. This tree just wasn't happy staying under the eaves. This is at Bed Bath & Beyond in Westlake. This one here, this isn't a native, but it's, think of when you see those little star pines at the grocery store at the holidays and you think that you're going to save a tree and plant it out by your front door. This is what happens. Those get really huge. And this one here, this is a native, but it is a California, it's a coastal redwood. And there's a reason that this tree is called a coastal redwood. It likes coastal conditions. This is inland. This is going to have a lot of dry stuff in it. And also close to the house, twice as big as the house, there's going to be a lot of fuel in this. If there's a fire, there's going to be a lot of fuel in this tree for this house right here. So what you need to do is spend some time in your yard. Know the characteristics of your yard. So the compass direction, the sun, the wind, if you've got wind going down certain areas, know that against a wall, it's going to pick up velocity. So you don't want the big flappy plants on that side of your yard. Shade areas and maybe water areas. So what you need to do is sketch out your yard. And this is a great sketch here that shows things that you might not think of. So we know that, you know, you've spent time in your yard, you took your chair out there and you took with your iced tea and you spent a lot of time with a book and you saw where the sun came and stuff. So what they did include here was the you know, things that you might not think of, like if there's a nice view, you know, you might want to leave an area to open for the nice view where you could put maybe a table and some chairs and then the high plants that are exposed to the noisy neighbors. So sketch out your yard. Okay, then you need to put on your research goggles and find native plants. So the Arboretum All-Stars is UC Davis has picked out 100 plants that do well in our area, and 100's not really a lot. And they're not all native plants. When you go to the Arboretum All-Star site, you can go to the database and to search for plants. So what we have here, so this is one that I picked out of the database. And it gives you all the information that you need on it. It tells you, you know, the size, the color, the sun exposure, water needs, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, and pruning needs, because I am the lazy gardener. I want to know how much time I'm going to have to put into this. Okay, also on the All-Star site, they have a brochure that you can download that has a lot of really good information. Not only does it list plants with nice pictures to help you, you know, kind of choose, and it tells you what the conditions, the water needs are, and the maintenance needs, but there's planting information and there's little charts that tell you what the botanical names are. And also, the California Native Plant Society has something called CalScape now. And if you go to the CalScape, they have 7,990 plants that are native to California. You should be able to find something there. All of them aren't going to work in your area. There's a little map that helps you pick them out, but it gives you a lot of information on a lot of different plants with a lot of great pictures. So, okay, so it's good to know before you start that some native plants can be picky. And note that I did find a little picture of a guy picking his nose if you think that I don't like putting these things together. So some of the picky plants that don't want any supplemental irrigation during the summer: flannel bush, bush poppy, woolly blue curls. And there's more too. There's a lot more plants. These are just the ones that came up to me kind of right away. So there's also plants that are predisposed to disease when irrigated during the summer. So this is perfect. You know, you get these plants established and you don't water them during the summer. Know that even if they're drought tolerant, when it comes to the fall and the winter, if we're not having rains, you're going to have to water them because that's when they're used to getting water. So here's the flannel bush, the Fremontodendron. Don't do this. This is a great picture of how this plant can look. You see it as a shrub. You also see it trimmed up as a tree. Don't put it up against a building because that's a super big fire hazard in our area. We don't want anything up against buildings. Bush poppy, the Dendromicon. Okay, this is a plant that also does not like summer water, but it's known for having really sensitive roots. This plant grows right across the street from me in the canyon. This plant grows wild and crazy. I cannot get this one established because the roots are so sensitive on this plant. It's kind of like you take it out of the pot and you don't look at it and quick put it in the ground and don't tamp too hard. Woolly blue curls, I haven't had a problem with this one. This one's supposed to be a little hard to get established, but I haven't had a problem with this one. Also, this is one that is in the part of my garden that gets no supplemental water. Manzanita. Okay, manzanita is one that was it was used a lot in the trade. You used to see it a lot, and they stopped using it because it wasn't long-lived. Well, the reason that it wasn't long-lived is because we were watering it during the summer, and it's predisposed to all those diseases when you water it during the summer. And the same with the ceanothus. Okay, the ceanothus has a really nice, pretty long blooming season, and this one's pretty cool because the colors, because it's by the Fremontodendron. This one doesn't like the summer water, like I said, and they don't use it so much because the landscapers say, well, you know, hey, it doesn't live for very long, but it doesn't live for very long because we were watering it all the time when it didn't want to be. Also, this plant seems to have fared pretty well during the fires. So that might be one to consider. While any plant can burn and nothing's been proven yet, but this is a good go-to, as long as you keep the dead stuff cut out. So what you want to do is make a list. So you're going to have two sides to your list: plants that you like and areas that you have. So I crossed out the under the eaves on this one because that's a place where that tends to stay damp for longer, but nobody wants to be planting under the eaves anymore after these crazy fires, because if you follow the CAL FIRE recommendations, they want to keep everything at least 5 feet away from structures, which is a really good idea. So group your plants by water needs. Okay, this is going to help you save water. This is called hydrozoning. So where can I find the water requirements for my plant list? Okay, this is a great site that I wish was here when we did our yard, because it was a lot of give and take on the poor plants in my yard, the ones that didn't last. This is the WUCOLS. It's the Water Use Classification of Landscape Species. And what they've done is they've taken, it's not all hearsay anymore. It's a lot, the professionals got together, the educators got together, the nursery people got together, and they all hashed out the water use for these plants. It's not just, oh, that one needs a little, that one needs a lot. So if you go to the site, you can break things down by California natives. You can put in your city. We are all South Coast. I did Agora Hills on this one. So when I did Agora Hills and the native plants, it came up with 717 different plants that you could use here. And it breaks them down. You can click on them, you can export them into groups, very low, moderate water. And if it's a plant that's not going to do good in your area, it's going to tell you. And there's pictures in here. There's a lot more pictures than they used to be, but don't depend on them having a picture for your particular plant yet. But like I said, when I first started in looking into this, they had maybe 2 or 3 pictures, but there's a lot now. And so they'll give you cultural information, which is really good on your plants. So now what? We will ponder that. Okay, the California Native Plant Society also has a site called the Cowscape Garden Planner. So they can help you find the right plants. It's going to ask you what you're looking for. Are you looking for pollinators? Are you looking to attract birds? Are you just looking for a place to sit and drink wine? But it'll tell you, oh, I think I missed something here. Hold on. No? Oh, maybe not. Okay, so size matters. Okay, so usually if anything larger than a 1 gallon pot is going to need more care and take more time to establish into the native soil. So a plant in a 1 gallon container will usually catch up to its 5 gallon neighbor in a year or so. And it's going to establish much faster because it hasn't been in that pot. So root-bound native plants in smaller containers have little chance of surviving transplant because, like I told you with the island bush poppy, that it's got sensitive roots, and a lot of these native plants do have sensitive roots. So you can't, like with the gardenia or the geranium that you took and you took it out of the pot and you messed up and you stuck it in the ground and it grew. You have to be a little bit more careful with the native plants. So decide what you want from your garden, okay? It's not just, your lawn there to look green. You get to decide what you're going to get out of this garden. So if you want to attract pollinators, butterflies and bees feed in full sun. So that's going to be the place where you're going to put your flowers. Choose a variety of plants that bloom throughout the year. We think of the monarchs and you plant your native milkweeds for the monarchs, but also you have to think about them when they go to migrate in the fall. You want plants that are there for them to feed on when they migrate. So try and choose plants that bloom throughout the year. And it's not so easy picking. That you'll notice in the fall, there's not a whole lot of plants. Usually the aster family is a good one to go to for fall blooming plants. So bees like floral consistency. So if you're planting for a pollinator garden, bees like about a 3-foot square space of one plant. So if you've got little blooming plants, you might need a few of them. If you've got that Ceanothus concha, that's enough. That guy gets huge. Butterflies like inflorescence. So butterflies are going to like those plants that have a lot of little flowers. That's what an inflorescence is, a lot of little flowers, because they can't move around so freely. So when they land, they're going to want to stay in one area and get as much out of that plant as they can. So how about bird watching? I love the birds. So for birds, you want to include nesting areas, plants that supply berries, plants that, toyon would be a good one for that, plants that supply seeds, plants that supply nesting materials, and plants that attract insects. I'll go on. So anyway, this was just last week when I was sitting out front, and here it shows the activity of a whole flock of little tiny birds working the insects on this this side. I believe it's I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one. I think it's a Winifred Gilman sage, but I'm not positive. Okay, so native gardening is easier than you think. So forget everything that you learned about gardening, okay? Because we've learned things that have gone through family members for generations and generations, and probably they came from someplace else, so it didn't work here anyway. So basically, all you need for native gardening is you need to know the water requirements for your plants. You get that from the wool call site, the soil requirements of your plants, the sun and shade requirements of your plants, and mulch. So when should you plant? Okay, now is not the time to plant. Everybody wants to save water. Now's a good time to kill your lawn and take it out and to start the design process. Fall and winter planting is the best. You're going to use less water getting these established because your plants do not take up water. The days are shorter, so your plants aren't going to take up water when it's dark, and there's going to be hopefully less evaporation. And it gives them a head start on getting established before that big spring bloom comes. So before you plant, you're going to want to remove the lawn and the weeds. And I believe that tomorrow is the talk on removing the lawn. After you do that, before you plant, you're going to want to water well and then wait and see what comes up and remove any new weeds that have sprouted. And don't till. Okay, you've removed the lawn. It's been sitting there for a couple months while you've been designing all of this, deciding what you want to do, but don't till, because if you till, you're going to just bring up more weeds. Don't add any amendments. And that's something that's you really have to watch out for right now that I've seen. There's a few guys that are going around and they're redoing these lawns to water-wise lawns, but they're taking out your soil. You don't, and they're bringing in this fancy fluffy stuff. They're carting out your soil and bringing in stuff that's not what your native plants want. Your native plants want your native soil. Don't add any amendments. You know, these plants were here for a reason, and worked the way that they did because of our soils. So also water your plants well a day ahead of time. And for planting basics, which you can also see in the All-Stars brochure, hole no deeper than the soil in the pot, fill the hole with water and let it drain. Okay. If you have a drainage problem, what you can do, fill it, if you dig a foot hole, a foot deep hole, and you fill it with water and let it drain, and then fill it up right away. And see how long it takes to drain. Anything 1 to 6 inches an hour, and you can break it into 15 minutes and multiply by 4 if you want to save time. But anything 1 to 6 inches per hour is good drainage. If it doesn't drain like that, you might have compaction problems, and that's a whole nother story. You have to fix that. So what you're going to do is tap the pot on the sides and the bottom and slip it off. It's, like I said, a lot of these plants have really sensitive roots, so undisturbed roots are the best. Backfill with native soil. Don't add amendments. They just want that native soil. You want the roots to grow into your native soil, and you don't want to add any cushy stuff in there, that might make your roots not want to go into the. It's like your adult children. You want them to spread their roots. You don't want them to stick around too long. So your plant should sit slightly above grade on firm ground, because it's going to sink a little. They all do. And tamp it down around the sides to remove any air pockets and no fertilizer. Native plants do not like fertilizer. And after you plant, water deeply, mulch around the plant, but not at the crown. That's leave at least 6 inches from where the stem meets the roots. You don't want that area staying down. And add a rock. I was always told, I always added a rock. I never knew why, but if you've got like a southwest exposure, if you add a rock in front of that southwest area, it's kind of going to shade it a little bit while it's going through the establishment period. So know when to water. Okay, no plant, native or not, is drought tolerant until it is established and its roots have extended into the native soil. So it's important to keep the root ball moist when the plants are going through this period. So you're going to water right on the root ball. Okay. Check soil moisture frequently and irrigate when the top 3 to 4 inches is dry. The water requirements in the wool call site apply to established plants only. So when is your plant established? It's established when the roots have grown into the native soil. And usually it'll kind of tell you by how it starts growing, it'll grow a lot more. So when you're establishing your plants, you're going to water them deeply. The entire root ball and the surrounding soil should be saturated. Know your soil. So sandy soil, the water kind of goes down faster. The clay soil, it moves out a little bit more. So clay soils, you might have to water and let it sink in and water and let it sink in, whereas in sandy soils, you might have to put separate emitters because the water's going straight down. It's not going all around that root area. So water when the top 3 to 4 inches are dry. And if your plants are from small pots, the little 4-inch pots, water when the top 1 to 2 inches is dry. And stress. So wilt, color change, and leaf drop, those are stress signs, and it could be from too much or too little water. And a lot of the time these signs look the same. So if the top couple inches of soil is still moist, you shouldn't be watering. And mulch, okay, mulch applied to the tops of the soil. It prevents evaporation. It helps moderate soil temperature, suppresses weeds, controls erosion, keeps dust down, and just looks cool. So if you've got organic mulch, such as bark mulch or the stuff from the tree chippers, it's going to add nutrients as it breaks down. So mulch tips, and this is important for saving water because you can save like 40% of evaporation just by using mulch. Mulch should be put 3 to 6 inches deep. If you live in a WUI, a wildland interface, urban interface area, keep it to 3 inches for the organic mulch, the bark mulch, and not within 5 feet of your structures. Keep it away from the crown of the plants. So you're going to picture like maybe a dinner plate, and then that's going to be the clear area around the base of your plant. And size matters. Okay, the bigger chunks are usually the better. I know that the smaller pieces look really nice and really refined, but sometimes they mat and keep the water from going in. The larger ones allow for exchange of water and oxygen. And know what your plants want. Most native plants like the organic mulches. If you're going with succulents and plants like that, the more deserty plants, they kind of like rocks. So after establishment, what now? Okay, so occasional water may improve appearance. Wet area, high mountain plants will need some summer water, and sandy soils may need irrigation, but check with your plants. Like I said, the water might be going straight down and not out. Chaparral shrubs and native oaks are sensitive to summer water, so be mindful. So the rules on watering: early morning, you don't have to water at night. The water will sink in, but the plants are going to take them up till morning. And when I say early morning, 3 a.m. is a decent start time. Frequency depends on your soil. Drip emitters are fine for establishment, but you have to adjust them. Once your plants are established, you're going to have to move them out so they cover the whole root area. And with natives, instead of using those little drip, drip, drip heads, you want to use the micro sprinklers, the ones that spray, because the drip ones tend to saturate your soil, and most native plants aren't used to saturated soils. So most drought tolerant plants can handle a watering schedule of once a month. Wow. So we think of, yeah, they're saying, oh, I can only water once a week, once a month. So here's the pretty part. Here's some plants. These are all plants from my yard, except for this one. This one is in a wildland area, but it's right up against a dump site, a place where they dump all their concrete and stuff. This woolly blue curls is doing fine on its own. The cliff mates, this one I included because this is actually what this plant looked like when I brought it home from the nursery, and it's been years and it has not bloomed since. So you never know what you're going to get. Here's some more. Usually thistles are invasive plants, but this red thistle, this one's a native plant. And the Conejo buckwheat, that one's pretty cool. So I've included a little bit more information on some of these plants. I'll try and get through this fast. This one, the iris, this one's a good one because it says that it likes seasonal flooding. And if you listen to our climate scientists, they say that's the kind of rain that we're going to be getting. We're going to be getting a lot of it coming down at once. We're going to be getting seasonal flooding. The Conejo buckwheat, this picture doesn't do it justice. There's more of a chartreuse color on the flowers here. If you find this one, plant it. This one is great. It's not only a really nice looking plant, but these silver plants they have little hairs called trichomes, and they reflect the light. So if you put this out in your garden, in a moonlight garden under a full moon, these plants kind of glow. Coyote mint, this is a good one for a ground cover or a low one. You can use this as an edging. And the California poppy, this is what, when you're waiting for your plants to establish and everything looks like just like little nothings in your yard, throw a bunch of poppy seeds out there and get the poppies going. Everybody likes poppies. And oh, there's my Lucia that I said bloom spring and summer or never. Monkey flower, these come in all different colors, and these may go dormant in the heat. So if your plant's established and it looks like it's dead, hang on, it might just be dormant. And the Margarita Bot penstemon. This is one of my favorites because if you plant this plant, people will stop and ask you what that plant is because it is that showy. And if you discover a plant, they let you name it. So this Margarita Bot penstemon sounds like very vacation-like and party-like. And the truth of the matter is that it was discovered at the Santa Margarita Las Politas nursery. So that's where Margarita came from. And they found it at the back of the porch. And that's where the bop comes from. So it's instead of party, it's kind of hang back and rest. Santa Cruz Island buckwheat. I'm surprised. This one does very good in my yard. And where I live, we get no coastal influence. But this one's done really good. I have maybe sprinkled it off a little bit, like in the morning, to give it a little bit of a little coastal influence, but I really don't. It doesn't get any summer water, and I don't do anything besides that special with it. Deergrass. What you have to know about deergrass is it's pretty flammable. But if you water it a little bit, it'll stay green. And what I do with mine, since I do live in a wildland interface area, what I do with mine is I cut it all the way to the ground come September. And it comes up every year. It comes back nice and green and pretty. And California fuchsia. These come in low varieties as ground covers or higher varieties, but this is one that you will have to cut back at the end of the season because it gets very dry, and especially if you live in a wild and urban interface. And this is it. I'm going to use this picture on all my presentations. This is the bunny reading the sign that says to protect the wildlife. This is the conejo buckwheat. That's a better picture of what it is, what the color looks like. And these guys are the red thistles. They only live for 2 years, but if you have one, it will seed. And so these guys are this year's, and these guys are going to be next year's blooms. And if you have those and you plant them, the whole neighborhood will have them. So gardening questions, you can contact us at the helpline. The email, we're not taking calls yet, but you can email us and send us pictures. We like pictures. If you have a problem or an issue with something, send us a picture of the problem. Send us a picture of the entire plant, or if it's a tree, the whole tree, you know, stand back, take a picture of the tree. Also, if you take a picture of what it looks like around the base and the ground, that helps us too. We'd like lots of pictures. And here are my resources. I'd like to, this California Native Plants for the Garden book that's one that you see, the designers when you go to these native gardens, when you go to the native nurseries, that's the book that they're all taking with them around. And if you can get it, if you can get one of them loaned to you, the price of this just in the last couple of weeks has doubled. So if you can find it at the library and try to find it used or something like that, that's a good idea.
We have a couple of questions, Dani.
Sure. Let me.
While people are looking at this,
oh,
you can keep it up there. Sorry.
Okay.
There we go. So somebody wants to know what type of mulch is best for natives.
But most of it, just the mulch is just something that's going to cover the soil. So it could actually be anything. Like I said, the bigger, like the bark chunks, the best stuff is the stuff that you get from the tree trimmers, because it's a nice big chunks. As long as it's not worked into your soil, it's not going to spread any diseases or anything into your soil or anything like that. Eucalyptus is even a decent mulch too. It's because it's going to break down and it's going to help your soil. I did replace my bark mulch that was up against the house with rock mulch, and I was a little concerned about how the plants would react to that, but it's going on 2 years now, and they've done fine with that. Like I said, it doesn't add the organic matter. When you see like the valley oaks, are, the reasons they do so good is because they have that mulch layer, and that's what feeds them, and that's what does good. But yeah, just going with the regular bark mulches, or if you can get it from a tree trimmer, the big chunky mulches, and kind of stay away from the pretty stuff, the small stuff, and like the things like the gorilla hair mulches, which are nice because they stay on slopes, but they're extremely dangerous in fires. So stay with the medium bark size or the chipper stuff.
Okay, and do you have any recommended? You mentioned a few ground covers, but do you have any other recommended ground cover natives?
If you go into you can pick ground covers if you go into the WUCOL site.
Okay.
That's one place. And the Calscapes also has, you can pick out plants by ground covers too. And what's good about those sites is you can go in and put your area. and it will tell you, because I think there was like the Wukul site had like thousands of native plants.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so it'll tell you if it'll do good in your area, but those are good places to start to go look. And then, like I said, the native plants for the garden I would look through that right now, but I think I've loaned it out to a neighbor.
Okay, another question. Is red thistle weedy?
Well, it will spread.
Okay.
When it blooms, it'll be like a snowstorm out there, and wherever those seeds land, it will grow another plant. It's my neighbors don't like it because, and I try and cut the heads off before they do that because they're really sharp. If you touch them, they're not very friendly plants, but they're really cool looking when they do bloom, when they have that red and the pollen in the middle of them.
Okay. There's a question about us sharing the slides, and you'll see in the chat box from Alexa that this recording will be available on our YouTube channel, and she put the link. But okay, here's another question. For plants that like to be dry over summer but are still getting established, how do you handle the watering in the coming season?
Okay, so hopefully,
like a ceanothus.
Yeah, if you plant them in the fall, and that's going to give them more time to establish, then hopefully they will be established by the time summer comes around. If they're not established when summer comes around, you're going to have to still keep watering them. That's why one of the reasons we recommend planting in the fall. But this is perfect because it gives you time now. You're going to have time to take out your lawn, because you think that your lawn was dead, and then you get a freak rainstorm and all of a sudden it's all green again. So this gives you a good time to take out your lawn and get your design together.
Okay. A question about amendments, because you told everybody not to put amendments when you're planting your natives. And she's asking, even when the soil is compacted heavy clay.
Okay, so compacted soil is different from your heavy clay. Okay, clay is just really tiny particles, so that the water doesn't sink into them as easily. That's different from the drainage. If your soil is compacted, you're going to have to work that soil. You're going to have to get in there with pickaxes and everything to try and break it up to make it take in water. That's why you don't want to walk on a wet soil. If you've got bare soil and it's wet, you're going to compact it. So it's a little bit different. Clay soil, everybody has clay soil, and everybody's hated their clay soil forever. But your clay soil is going to hold on to water a lot longer, a lot more than, say, a sandy soil. So, but the clay soil, you've got problems. You water it for 2 minutes and it starts running off. So you might have to, they call it pulse watering now. So you might have to water for a couple minutes, let it sink in, and water for a couple minutes, let it sink in. But once you get a deep watering, that clay soil is going to hold on to the water a lot longer.
Okay. I think so. People were asking a couple of good native nurseries, and Theodore Payne is one, and that is in the valley. And I put Matilaha Nursery, but I think I spelled Matilaha wrong. So forgive me, please. But Matilaha Nursery in Moore Park is all natives.
Yeah, and if you're looking for Theodore Payne, is really good they have a fall plant sale. So, that's the perfect time to get your plants. Is they have their big time of the year is fall. And I'm trying to think other native nurseries. They're not as close as like I said, there's the Las Politas, which is, I drove all the way to their Escondido nursery for a plant once. for a special plant that used to be native here, that is no longer here. But no, a lot of these plants you can find in the bigger nurseries too.
Can earthworm compost be added to the soil? And also landscape fabric?
Oh, with the okay, so as far as adding you know, if you're adding a little bit to the top, your compost, your earthworm compost, it's going to add organic matter to the soil, which is good. But you don't have to. I'd save that for your vegetables. That's a good one for your vegetables. What was the other question?
Landscape fabric, can you use
landscape fabric.
That's below rocks?
Yeah, if you're going to use the smaller rock, you really need a landscape fabric, because else the rock's going to go into the soil. Except know that with the landscape fabric, what's going to happen over time is there's going to be dirt or soil that collects on between the fabric and the rocks, and if you get a weed in there, it's really hard to pull out because the weed sticks their roots through that landscape fabric, and they're kind of there forever. I have both. I have smaller. By the cactus garden, I have smaller rocks, and I do have a fabric under that. Out front, though, I have the bigger rocks, which were about the size as the medium bark nuggets. And I didn't put any fabric under that, and I have no problem with it whatsoever. And the weeds are really easy to pull out when they do come up from that.
Okay. Somebody's asking if cacti are natives.
I'm sure there's some native cactus. I have
Joshua trees.
We're a big state, and we do have, as you see, the what are those flat ones? The beaver tail cactus, is that what they call them? You see those all over the hills and in the open areas. So yeah,
and also the prickly pears.
That's what I was thinking of.
Oh, okay. Prickly pear. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of native cactus.
Yeah.
And like I said, that for mulch for your cactus, they're gonna like rocks more than they are. They're not the drama queens of all this extra stuff to help them grow. They like to be mistreated.
Okay. Are there any more questions? If not, it looks like we're finished for the evening. Thank you very much, Dani, and thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, everybody.